What's the hubbub? With the Lanterns trailer out now, I've got a lot of thoughts on that. We will also get to many other topics, including political implications of Paramount on the WB buyout, talks of James Gunn leaving, Zack Snyder not denouncing toxic fans, and more, as I'm covering a lot of viewer request topics and suggestions as well. But to start, the most recent news surrounds the Lanterns HBOMax series. You'll want to stick around through the end of this video as it's jam-packed. Once again, I'm not burying the lead on the hubbub. I'm starting with it. The Lanterns trailer just dropped, seemingly a day early due to a leak. Gunn basically said, well, the universe wanted it out, so let's embrace the early drop. We've been given an idea of what the show would be about in terms of its tone for some time. Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart investigate a murder in a small town, leading to deeper dark mysteries in a gritty noir style inspired approach. It's a detective series format dealing with a murder mystery. With all that in mind, the trailer gives me what I expected. Its purpose was to show how they interact with each other and teaser of what it's leading up to. I actually see some similarities to Smallville. In that series starring Tom Welling, it wasn't Superman straight out the gate. It was him learning what he needs to become, that hero. It was Clark's journey. Similarly, I'm a bit biased. I grew up as more of a Jon Stewart fan, so aside from this being in the DCU, he is my favorite Green Lantern. Any millennials watching? Yes, for many of us, the animated series for Justice League really made us fans of this iteration. Some of us identified and familiarized ourselves with him before Hal Jordan even. Hal is the grizzled veteran training John, who is in the start of his superhero career. As he's been chosen, Green Lanterns are chosen by powerful rings that seek individuals with immense willpower and the ability to overcome great fear. The rings are semi-sentient and utilize a seeker program to analyze potential hosts, while the ring acts as a seeker to find candidates in specific sectors. They often select worthy successors, such as Hal Jordan, who was chosen after Abinsur's crash. Existing Lanterns can recommend or select their own successors, allowing for a faster, more targeted selection process. Jon Stewart was chosen as a backup, known for his military precision. As Murphy's Multiverse fan site points out, James Gunn and Chris Mundy made it clear early on that they were not interested in a Green Lantern project set in a bubblegum-colored corner of the galaxy. Instead, the trailer reveals that this is every bit the grounded, atmospheric murder mystery it has always been made out to be. I totally respect having questions of how it all plays out, and even having initial impressions based on the trailer, which is teasing what's ahead. Where I take issue is, once again, the Snyderbros seem more likely to fully make assumptive leaps of everything negative. Just like recently, James Gunn replied to a fan's cosplay with 5 stars, and the Snyderbros used it to imply he was cussing at him. No, those are stars, not asterisks, you morons. Anyways, as per their limited intellect in not knowing the full story or chain of events, we already see the lazy critique. They say the jacket is Guardians of the Galaxy, and Gunn is in charge of it all again. At this point, we don't even know if that suit is the one he wears. Could it be a suit from a former Lantern who died? Maybe a version of Alan Scott? Or say it is Hal's suit. Does it glow after powered? Does he still wear it or need to? As for being the only human, there are a lot of potential contextual reasons he says that. Maybe he's talking about his off-world, meetings with other Lanterns in a larger sense, as he's referencing the alien world. He could just be mentioning Lanterns that aren't stationed on Earth and his dealings with them. There are too many unknowns to be crying this hard. We have more questions than answers, but a lot of forced hatred. Yes, Gunn helps to get projects greenlit. But just like with Supergirl, where it's actually directed by Craig Gillespie. This isn't a series that is developed and directed by Gunn. It's always assumptive. Negativity by a certain cult crowd. You find a way to make everything a slant against Gunn and insist on applying Guardians of the Galaxy as an insult that he can't do anything else. This isn't a band of misfits in a galactic space setting. It's Hal and John in training grounded to Earth by a murder investigation. We don't even know who the murder is of. At this point, you could see someone pick up an object with their right hand, and some Snyderbro would cry, "Oh, look, he is right-handed just like Star-Lord." What a Guardians of the Galaxy copy. The copium over a dead flop SnyderVerse is pathetic. You look to complain about anything. Whereas if we slapped a Zack Snyder credit that reads dark, gritty, grounded, lanterns, produced by Zack Snyder, you guys would be all over the worship of this series. It's so funny to me that it's exactly the kind of deconstructing you supposedly love if it was Snyder projects. But now that it's not him, all of a sudden, that's not the style you want. What I find laughable is when your mission, such as Aaron Fischer's here, becomes searching for outrage and hoping to find a way to dislike things. Let's listen into Aaron's Restore the SnyderVerse channel a moment. I'm no longer referring to his channel as my review, because that's not what it is. It's entertaining, and he presents well. But let's call this spade a spade.
Anybody defending this crap at this stage, you're nuts. You're a shill. You have no standards whatsoever. This is a complete bastardization of the Green Lantern's characters. There was so much backlash from the trailer that James Gunn had to come out and respond to the lack of green in the Lantern's trailer. And this is why it's not called Green Lantern. There is nothing about this show that is green. All James Gunn does, all his studio does, is bastardize these characters.
He's doing pure rage bait of James Gunn and the DCU, but I get the copium going on. Zack Snyder has no DC projects in contract or development, so you need to talk James Gunn, who has DC movies on the way, as the Snyderverse is dead and only lives in memories and memes. Let's expand more on the complaints I've seen that Hal refers to himself as being the only human Green Lantern while Guy Gardner exists. The Snyderbros are looking for gotcha moments, but like their DC EU flopverse, this argument flops as well. If you want to go literal on this even, and believe the scene as being the full context, which is unlikely in teasers like this. But I digress. Most who are non-comic book readers, or maybe those limited to Zack Snyder's movie canon of his DCEU, may not know or look for explanations. So what I'm going to tell that crowd now will be shocking. I know they are looking for what they can criticize, not what they can be excited about. So let's give a revelation now. Setting him apart from Jon Stewart and Hal Jordan, the 1994 series Guy Gardner, Warrior, issue number 25 reveals that Guy is actually a Vuldarian alien hybrid. While born and raised on Earth as a human, it was later revealed in comic storylines, specifically during the Warrior era, that he has alien DNA from the Vuldarian race, a warrior species. This is because a member of an alien race known as the Vuldarians mated with a human many generations ago within Gardner's bloodline. Again, as Murphy's Multiverse points out, Kyle Chandler's Hal Jordan is every bit the grizzled vet we expected. But the internet is currently losing its mind over the first look at the suits. Instead of the emerald green glow fans of the comics and animated series have grown accustomed to, the trailer reveals a tactical, almost brownish green, weathered uniform. It's a choice congruent with what Nathan Fillion as Guy Gardner was sporting in Superman, and that leans heavily into the utility aspect of the core, making them look like intergalactic peacekeepers who have been through the ringer a time or two, a green ringer savvy. A lot is being made out of Lindelof's stupid comment. An old clip of creator Damon Lindelof re-emerged where he mockingly addressed the green in Green Lantern.
So, you just announced a Green Lantern show.
It's called Lanterns because we all agreed that the green was stupid. So,
Right.
So now it's just lanterns.
But some common sense and social awareness is that it's a sarcastic setting and tone that's fully tongue and cheek. They speak on a host of topics in this video and maintain that sarcasm. Now we see comparisons to other crash and burn Green Lanterns takes. Wayne T. Carr is the real Green Lantern and would have been better is circulating around from Snyderbros, who think they are sensing blood in the water, really? Because Zack Snyder did a shot in the driveway that to you looks visually right. I'll be 100 with you guys. I think this looks cheap as it is. To me, yes, it looks shot in a driveway, and no offense to the guy, but he doesn't jump off the screen at all. I'll take the lanterns cast out of suits any day over this. This looks like a leather Temu jacket. That's quality to some of you? I think it looks awful, and while Martian Manhunter was never planned from the start as being General Swan's wick, I'll also take that any day of the week over this unknown actor who looks like his gig is modeling Temu jackets. As for Ryan Reynolds' Green Lantern, it was never fully awful to me. It was a mid-movie, but also nothing to get excited about. Lanterns is going for a build-up, much like Smallville did, or if you go way back, before many of us were born, almost elements of the Hulk TV series that starred Bill Bixby. They do a story, and when he finally hulked out, it felt like a payoff. As a series, that works if done correctly, just as in Smallville, Clark may be working on a story within the framework of still learning his powers. In Lanterns, they are figuring out a murder as John Stewart is training. The purpose is to show his start before he earns the superhero payoff. That's what Nolan and Snyder did with grounding Man of Steel. Whether it's his dad saying, "Let the kids die" on that school bus, or Clark's decision out of a beer pour on his head to take out his anger on the livelihood of a truck driver. Superman out there snapping Zod's neck like you snap crab legs at a Red Lobster. The mental gymnastics to say that's your preferred style. And Lanterns is not comic book accurate enough for you. So when rumors swirl, which are based on conjecture and just editorial opinion, not sources, not insiders, that James Gunn might leave DC early due to political tension, those comments don't just float if it favors a bad outcome for Gunn. They get grabbed, amplified, and repurposed into "see, the reset is failing, restore the original vision," except, and this part is inconvenient, there are no credible insider reports that Gunn is planning an early exit, none. No sourced confirmation. No trade reports, just speculation. And speculation is undefeated at building cinematic universes out of thin air. Now, to be clear, most Snyder fans are just passionate movie lovers. They want to see more of the continuity that started with Man of Steel and culminated in Zack Snyder's Justice League. That's fair. Fandom is supposed to be passionate. But there's also a louder faction that treats every DC headline like it's election night coverage, new casting announcement, rigged, creative pivot, deep state, box office fluctuation. And the people have spoken. Staying on this a moment, that's where I must disagree with Zack Snyder, avoiding the truth that a cult segment who acts toxic exists. What makes them toxic? This criticism by me is aimed at a relatively small segment whose online behavior has at times crossed into harassment and hostility. This fringe has been targeting film critics and journalists who gave negative reviews to Snyder, organizing dogpiling campaigns on social media, and spreading accusations of corruption or bias without evidence. Some critics publicly reported coordinated harassment after reviewing certain DC films unfavorably. Most of you know they even did a review bomb effort. In March 2021, a faction of Zack Snyder, fans often called Snyderbros, targeted Godzilla vs. King by review bombing, leaving 1-star IMDb ratings and demanding to restore the SnyderVerse. Misguidedly, they targeted the Warner Brothers distributed film to protest the studio's decision to move away from Snyder's DC vision. There have also been instances of hostility directed at cast and crew, members associated with non-Snyder DC projects, as well as backlash toward creators like James Gunn and his actors when he assumed leadership of DC Studios. In some cases, actors who expressed mixed or nuanced opinions about Snyder's vision faced online attacks. Some said nothing and still get targeted, such as David Corenswet, who plays Superman, isn't wearing the 1Z outfit. So those who wear diapers as adults living with their parents rent-free allow Gunn to live rent-free in their brains by calling him Diaper Man. They are trunks, folks, but hyper-focus on the most inane issues you can. There is also Millie Alcock, who has faced such toxicity with grace. She is rather renowned for her acting ability. The Supergirl adaptation has her dealing with the trauma of witnessing Krypton's destruction. The Snyderbro response is to not know or understand the source material, making fun of her looks and calling her some pretty misogynistic, crude insults. Shoot, they even went after Henry Cavill for a time when he dared to cameo in the Black Adam movie and talked about a potential Superman sequel without Zack Snyder, which they saw as preventing Snyder from remaining in control of the DCEU. They flipped out on David Ayers at one point. David was attacked by some fans for publicly supporting James Gunn and the new direction of DC Studios, which involved encouraging fans to stop the campaign to release his alternate cut of Suicide Squad and to embrace the new DC cinematic direction. Now, most recently went after Jason Momoa, landing his dream role of Lobo. Additionally, parts of this fringe promoted conspiracy-style narratives, including claims that studios deliberately sabotaged Snyder or that there was widespread industry corruption, often without verifiable evidence. Organized review bombing efforts against non-Snyder DC films were also attributed to this group, such as the Godzilla example earlier. Although the Release the Snyder Cut campaign ultimately succeeded in seeing the release of Zack Snyder's Justice League on HBOMax, that was also a larger DC fandom before there was even a reboot in place. Some who support Gunn and the DCU now took part in that initiative and now are not supporting to replace and restore Gunn with Snyder. It's not the same coalition. The Restore Snyderverse clowns don't have all the fans that were part of Release the Snyder Cut crowd. Critics argue that some participants of the now Restore Snyderverse crowd just spam campaigns, target executives, and attempt pressure, which escalates into harassment and online terrorism with threats. This is not a normal fan base. It's a freak cult show. Toxic gatekeeping has been observed.
And if Paramount think they're just going to push 30 films a year without any backlash, they got another thing coming. He has the fans to deal with. These companies have to do what the fans ask and give the fans what they want. And if they don't, they will be punished for it.
With some individuals asserting that real DC fans must support Snyder's vision, attacking fans who enjoyed other DC entries like the Batman and framing disagreement as betrayal. Now that Reeves' Batverse is clearly separate from the DCU continuity, they don't see it as the same threat and backed off some. Though Affleck not having a standalone Batman still makes them cope at times, it's not their primary crusade at the moment. At some point, you have to admire the stamina in the Snyder tryhards who aren't that toxic. Though, why don't a lot of them support his non-DC work? They aren't working on the more Rebel Moon sequel support. Once again, I'm not hearing them hype that lesbian action movie he is collaborating with Tig Notaro on. They only highlight his Instagram posts of the DC stuff and act like his other pictures don't exist. That never makes their news feed. Oh, here's a pic from The Watchmen. Cue the crickets. Here's the business reality on the DCEU. Restoring the SnyderVerse wholesale would mean reversing the entire strategic direction Gunn is building. It would mean telling audiences, actually, never mind, that reset we just asked you to emotionally invest in? Psych. Studios don't do that unless there's catastrophic failure. And DC hasn't even fully launched its new foundation yet, which only has one movie in earliest beginning with Superman that did in 600 millions and spawned a Superman saga, which The Man of Tomorrow installment after Supergirl is poised to be a potential breakout success. Now let's talk about the political influence fear. There's an idea floating around by some commentators like John Campea, who I respect, and I've been telling the Snyderbros how he can be objective. Now his opinion matters to you, right?
And I say this all the time. Business and creative soul don't always play nice together. And that brings us to the elephant in the room. We have to talk about the culture clash. It's no secret that James Gunn is a very vocal, overtly political individual. If you follow him on social media, you know exactly where he stands. He has been a fierce critic of the MAGA movement and, quite frankly, many of the figures that the Ellison family is very closely tied to. David and Larry Ellison aren't just quote-unquote business guys. They are major players in the conservative political sphere. We've seen the reports from Variety and Bloomberg. There is a narrative that the new Paramount is going to be shifting towards a more quote-unquote MAGA-leaning content strategy. But James Gunn is the exact opposite of that branding. He is subversive, he's irreverent, and he is unapologetically progressive. Can you really see a world where James Gunn happily reports to a board of directors that represents everything he has publicly fought against? I don't care how many zeros are on the check. At a certain point, the creative friction becomes a wildfire.
I won't be dismissive of him here, simply because I disagree. Campea, who is widely recognized as leaning strongly liberal in his political outlook, has suggested that Gunn might not tolerate a studio environment that drifts too far right if it begins to influence creative decisions. That viewpoint reflects a broader concern in Hollywood that political shifts at the executive level could trickle down into storytelling mandates. From that lens, it's understandable why some observers wonder whether ideological tension could eventually create friction. In my humble opinion, as someone who leans liberal but sees David Ellison as pragmatic, you don't tear down a house before the foundation dries, from Ellison's perspective, aligning with a movement perceived fairly or unfairly as combative. Online introduces reputational risk. Corporations crave stability. They like broad audience appeal. They don't generally like trending hashtags that look like hostage negotiations and terrorism. At one point, I read a story that a Twitter or X user had a history of restore Snyder likes, and they actually tried something disgusting and dishonest to stir the pot. They used the death of Zack's daughter, Autumn, to post as if a Gunn fan, mocking it as being dead like his universe. Let me say that doing such an underhanded comment to prop your side up is beyond reprehensible. The majority of those giving the DCU a chance were mindful of empathy for that tragedy. The fandoms are so different. The Snyder cult, toxic portion, is willing to take such a tactic for the sake of their restore efforts. And let's be honest, if the Snyderverse was secretly being restored through political back channels, we wouldn't be decoding it via vague internet rumors from CosmicBookNews.
Paramount's buying Warner Brothers. The Saudis are back in Paramount. The Snyderverse is back fully in play. James Gunn quitting the DCU, folks. Cheers.
Billion-dollar franchises don't operate like Reddit fan fiction. One could argue that David Ellison, unlike his father, has demonstrated a more contemporary approach to studio leadership. While Larry Ellison's political leanings have drawn headlines over the years, David's public posture within the entertainment industry has tended to focus on production value, theatrical experience, and franchise longevity. If he's building bridges politically, it may be less about aligning with an ideology and more about ensuring that large-scale films, especially tentpole releases, continue to thrive in theaters. Let's also be honest about Gunn's Superman. There was nothing woke about it. Even the CosmicBookNews guy, Matt McGloin, or internally chuckling, McGloin, has stated that it wasn't woke. To be honest, that's never really carried over in his movie style. He blends pop culture into the mythic comic book realm, so I don't think Gunn is going there anyways. He just wants to make comic book-inspired superhero movies. In theory, sure, creators care about autonomy, but there is currently zero evidence that Ellison is trying to turn DC films into ideological pamphlets anyways. He is looking towards franchise longevity, not culture war. If anything, the consistent through line is commercial pragmatism, which brings us to the tonal rumors. Some reports have speculated that future Superman stories might become slightly more grounded emotionally, such as Man of Tomorrow, featuring Brainiac, basically moving tone towards the center a bit, and somehow, in certain circles, that gets translated into, see, the epic operatic tone is being dismantled for political reasons. Just remember, long before whoever finally buys the WB, if ultimately sold, the Man of Tomorrow story was planned out already. It starts shooting next month, and the deal with Paramount is far from over, with regulatory hurdles and oversight to go. It is going to be made as planned from the story inception. No influence is changing it. Audiences connect with emotional relatability. A slightly more grounded Clark Kent, in touch with what makes him human from upbringing with his Earth parents, doesn't mean abandoning mythic scope. It means letting a god-like being worry about rent once in a while. That's character depth, not ideology. Man of Tomorrow also dives into the psyche of Lex Luthor as well. No cringe Riddler acting Lex like Eisenberg, but a corporate Lex who thinks he's doing the greater good, even if he must sacrifice some people along the way. He thinks he is even protecting the Earth from this alien Superman. That's the dynamic. But again, if you're committed to the idea that everything is a coded message, then even a lighting choice becomes a manifesto. At the end of the day, what do we actually know? We know Ellison has donated to Democrats. We know executives maintain cross-party relationships for business reasons. We know Gunn is actively building a new DC universe. We know there are no verified reports of him leaving early. What we don't know is any secret master plan to undo the reset via political chess moves. The loudest corners of the SnyderVerse movement sometimes operate like they're decoding ancient prophecy, but most of the time, Hollywood decisions come down to something far less cinematic. Brand health, audience retention, and risk management are in the equation. So until a credible trade outlet reports actual conflict, the simplest explanation is still the most rational one. Ellison is running a studio. Gunn is building a universe. Politics exists in the background, but it isn't secretly rewriting the script. The DC universe isn't being decided in a shadowy back room with a red phone labeled Restore. It's being shaped the old-fashioned way by executives, creatives, contracts, and whether audiences show up on one opening weekend, which, let's be honest, is dramatic enough without adding groupthink conspiracy. So from lanterns to studio buyout, political squabbling, fandom toxicity, and more, we have covered a lot on this edition. Hopefully you could use this on a long commute or workout session, as we ran a bit long on this one, huh? With that, it's today's hubbub. No SnyderVerse, no problem. Wallets, open for the active DCU. Keep crying and pretending you won Snyderbros. You have no DC movies in contract, none in production, none with release dates. Guess who does? James Gunn and the DCU. Haha, Gunn keeps winning. The Snyderverse DCEU is toast. Scrape it into your garbage can, folks. Look up, not back, with eyes to the skies, and take care of yourselves and others. Boom, no restore ever, Snyder nut jobs.